everyone, Kevin Clear here with a comparison video for you. Now, I've got a couple of knives here that I honestly cannot believe I haven't done a comparison on before, but that's the truth of it. I actually was messaging back and forth with someone who was asking me questions about, what I preferred more, the XM18 or the Inkosi. And, we had a bit of a conversation about it. And I said, I think I've done this video. So you might, there might be things I'm forgetting. You can go find it on my channel. And then I said, and if I think of it, I'll find it for you. So I had a few minutes and I hopped on my channel and started kind of looking and searching around a bit. And I realized I have never done the video that we're getting ready to do right now, a direct comparison between the HInderer XM18 and the Reeve knives Inkosi. And I think the Inkosi makes the most sense because it is sort of the hard use offering from Reeve knives. And of course the HInderer, the XM18, right from its very inception, was designed to be a heavy duty, hard use type of folder. And both of these guys are knives that I like a lot. These are two favorites of mine for various reasons. I just find myself so enjoying both of these. Now, it's going to be tough to kind of give you a solid answer on which one I ultimately prefer, but I'm going to do my best. I've got some thoughts in my conclusion written down, but I actually haven't come to a 100% decision yet. So you're probably going to get some hemming and hawing at the end as I try to kind of finally tell you guys, yeah, I guess I do like one of these better than the other. But just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. I like these an awful lot, both of them. What I do hope I can do is give you enough information that if you haven't had a chance to spend a lot of time with both of these knives, you can at least make a fairly well-informed decision about where you want to go and which one you find the most appealing. Okay, so let's begin with price. Price is very comparable on these two. Now, both of the knives you see in front of you are upgraded versions, but the base price on both of these is $425. Now with the micarta, I think it goes up to $475 or $525. I'm not 100% sure on that. With the XM18, you can see we've got anodized lock side. We've got bronze hardware there. So both of those things are going to add a little bit of cost. I don't think the blade shape itself does. In fact, I'm pretty confident that whatever blade shape you want, you can pick it up for the $425 that they start at. The other thing I've got to say is recently, of course, the HInderers have started offering the tri-way pivot system. Now that is not what we have here. I will be getting a tri-way pivot XM18 in the near future for the channel. Just hasn't happened yet, but I will make some comments about that as we work our way through sort of the comparison of action on these, because that's pretty significant. In fact, that's a kind of a huge thing. All right. The last thing that I want to say is if you really want to pick one of these up and if you've been looking, if you haven't checked the secondary market, you owe it to yourself to do so. All right, both of these, especially the previous generation, so anything before the Gen 6, the price has come down a bit, so you can probably pick one up for $325, $350 on the secondary. And in Inkosi, you're probably going to be around $350 for that, but that's a big savings. And the other nice thing about that is if you buy them on the secondary market, unless you really beat it up, unless you're abusive to your knife, you can often get that money back out. So you can buy one, have the ability to kind of test it out, carry it a bit, see what you think. And if you really don't like it, you'll get most of your money back out of it and be able to switch to the other. So both of these do hold their value very well. And both of them you can spend more money on if you want to. As I said, neither one of these are stock. Okay, now, having gotten all of that discussion out of the way, by the way, the options on the XM18 and the Gen 6 tri-way pivot will come up in discussion again as we kind of get to that portion of the video. But let's start first off with the blade, okay? Beginning with the Reeve knives Inkosi, one of the great things about this knife is the blade. This is one of the most well-balanced blades in all of the knife industry, okay? It nearly perfectly walks the line between heavy duty and hard use, but still really great cutting power. And that's because Reeve uses what they call a large hollow grind here, and that just means a hollow grind that's not very aggressive, okay, that's not very kind of cupped out, if you will. So if that's a flat grind, you know, there's a normal hollow grind, let's say, and there's the hollow grind Chris Reeve uses. So it's a very shallow hollow grind. It makes for a very well-performing blade that still inspires a lot of confidence. Okay, now switching over to the Hinderer here, this is the Skinner grind. I love this grind. I really, really like it. But the Hinderers are going to, well, they will cut. I've had a few Hinderers. I've always been able to do what I needed to do with them. They tend to be a little thicker behind the edge. This is definitely one of the better options. Of course, the slicer would be another option that's going to cut a little bit nicer. If you have a Spanto grind, that would be one of there'd be a greater disparity, I would suggest, between the two blades. But we need to bring this up. One of the significant differences, while most Hinderer knives are going to be a little more heavy duty and a little thicker in the blade than the Inkosi, you have a lot of options, right? The standard that started the whole thing was the Spanto grind, and I still think the Spanto grind is a great blade. But in addition to that, you have the slicer grind and the Skinner grind and the sheep's foot and the Bowie, all of which offer slightly different performance and slightly different preferences. So that becomes, oh yeah, and you also, in addition to all of those options, you also have choil or no choil. All right, not in all those blade shapes, but at least in the slicer and I'm pretty sure the Spanto as well. You know, you can fill in the comments with any other options that are out there. So, well, I would say generally speaking, right, even compared to all the different blades, I like the cutting performance a little more on the Inkosi. Okay, so generally the blade on the Inkosi is going to slice a little bit better, and so it does get the win for cutting performance here because it's still very, very tough and very durable. But I also have to give special mention to the fact that with an XM18 you have this modularity where you can have all kinds of different blade options so that you can kind of find the one that best suits your purposes. And that is not a small thing, right? In fact, I initially wanted to sort of give the win to Hinderer because of those options, but ultimately, even, you know, and I've tried most of those blade grinds, and I still would argue that the Inkosi is a little nicer cutting tool than is a little nicer for cutting stuff, which is important for a knife, than any of the Hinderers. All the Hinderers will cut. Just to give you an example, the other day I cut up a bunch of peppers and onions and stuff for a stir fry with my XM18. It worked fine. It wasn't that I was like, oh man, this blade's too thick. It works, it does. But it doesn't work quite as well as the Inkosi. Okay, so on the blade itself, I've got to give the win to the Inkosi. I just like the nuance of it a little more. I like the thoughtfulness and the care that's put into the Inkosi blade just a hair more than I like the Hinderer. But I'm not forgetting to mention that there's lots of variation on those Hinderer blades, and that is a huge, huge thing. And I can see some people who are watching this thinking, no way, I'm going with Hinderer just for the variation. And I totally get that choice. All right. Having gotten that part out of the way, so first point, I guess, blade goes to the Inkosi as far as I'm concerned, and I get why some people might disagree. We've already said that. But let's now move on to lockup and deployment. Okay, so lockup and deployment on this Inkosi and on many Chris Reeve knives is notably smooth and flawless. It really does feel great. Now this one, watch. I can flick that out very nicely and very easily. This is a little smoother and faster than most of the Chris Reeve knives I've handled. And, you know, don't crucify me too badly here, but when I took this apart and cleaned it and lubricated it, I did not use Chris Reeve fluorinated grease. I used KPL, knife pivot oil, and the performance that I've been getting from the knife pivot oil in this pivot has been really, really enjoyable. All right, so, well, the Inkosi is not going to be the fastest deploying knife, and generally speaking, the idea behind these is to open them slowly and purposefully. This one does flick out pretty easily. I can't do it left-handed because there's not enough access there. Okay, but I can flick this out fairly quickly and easily. And I know there are some guys with fluorinated grease in theirs that have the same experience. My experience has been that the KPL works just a little nicer. All right, moving over to the Hinderer. This is where we've got a real, again, issue to deal with, okay? This Gen 4 happens to be spectacular, okay? It really, really is. This knife, I can't, hold on. There you go. This is a drop shut knife. The detent is pretty good so that it flips out with a good bit of authority. So the action on this particular XM18 is very good, but you guys are well aware that this has not often been the case. And Hinderer has received quite a bit of criticism over the fact that their detents are a little soft and the action is not always that great. Always smooth, always reliable, but not always super free dropping and stuff like that. So that would be a big issue here, except that in the current generation, the Gen 6 XM18s, you now have lots of options. You can have, they all ship with the tri-way pivot, meaning you've got bearings, ball bearings, or Teflon washers, or phosphor bronze washers. And you can switch them out from day to day if you're doing different stuff. You can switch them out based on your own personal preference. So that is a big deal. And by all accounts, the detent has been fixed as well. And there's the addition of a stainless steel lock bar insert. Now, that's a big, big thing, okay? One, that means that, well, I could previously have said, well, the ceramic ball in here interfaces with the blade, which is going to be more long lasting than the titanium on the blade. I can't, that takes that argument away from me completely. It also takes away, it also adds, I guess, an element of versatility to the Hinderer, and that's going to be a bit of a theme here. You can have whatever you want. All right, and now this is going to flick out like your typical ZT or any other sort of modern folding knife where we like to. Now this one works really, really well. It does, but I know all Hinderers are not like that. So that really throws a wrench in the works, and you have to. I feel like the tri-way pivot is such a big deal that in terms of the action, I have got to give the point to the Hinderer. I love Chris Reeve knives action. I love the smoothness of it. I love that large washer and the stability it provides. I'm a huge fan of all of it. I love, by the way, both of these are overbuilt in major ways. So whether you're talking about the lugs or the pivot screw, all of the components are big and heavy duty and reliable. Okay, so all those things are basically equal, but the tri-way pivot really becomes a primary issue here, and I've got to give special credit to Hinderer for doing that. And so in terms of the pivot, or in terms of lockup deployment and action, I've got to give that point to the Hinderer. So blade went to the Inkosi, Hinderer gets the action point for sure. Moving on now to another important point, and they're kind of 2 points here, although they're not terribly comparable. Okay, I want to talk for a minute about takedown, maintenance, and longevity. Both of these are very, very good along these lines. So first of all, both of them have very good warranties. Second of all, they all have systems in place whereby if there's some damage to your knife or break it, whatever the case may be, you can easily get parts. You can send them back to their manufacturers. Chris Reeve, of course, is kind of famous for their spa treatment where they'll clean everything up. They'll put a new bead blast on your handle. It's a really, really great service. And they have a blade replacement service as well that I can't remember what it costs, but it's reasonable. So both of these knives can be used with confidence, even to the point that you're a little worried you might do some more long-term damage, because the options are always there to warranty these things and get them back up to proper working order. Okay, that's fantastic. The other thing about this, and I'm going to kind of roll this all into one talking point, the other thing about this is both of these come apart so easily, right? One of the things I find myself doing more than any person should ever do is taking knives apart. I take them apart for others, right? Everyone I know with a folding knife, as soon as they have problems with it, they give it to me and say, what the heck is going on? Can you fix this? But in addition, I virtually always, okay, probably 90% of the time, if I'm going to review a knife, part of me preparing for that review is taking the thing apart. All right. The odd time when I think I've got a good handle on it, I can really see what's going on in there and it's functioning completely perfectly, I may not bother, but most of the time I'm going to take a knife apart. So I have taken apart way too many knives, and let me tell you, these two are a joy. when you take these apart, they just come apart so easily. There's no issues. Everything pops open. Everything fits back together. It's quick, it's easy, and that becomes a huge issue, by the way, with the tri-way pivot. So if you had a knife that was really hard to get apart, it wouldn't help much that you could switch the pivot out because no one wants to do it. This thing just comes apart so easily. You can switch that pivot out, put the back together. It's great. It really, really is huge. Okay, both of these come apart so easily for cleaning and maintenance. Now, the one added bonus that we get from the Hinderer, kind of like the tri-way pivot option, is the variability. So you buy a base Hinderer, and you want to change the scale, you want to change the hardware, you want to change the insert here, you want to change insert here, you want to change the clip. Whatever you want to do, you can get all this stuff aftermarket and really personalize your knife. And that is really, really significant. Okay. Not only, so let's call it a tie in terms of how well and how easily these come apart, but where it's totally not a tie is in terms of the variability that you get with the Hinderer. You can do all kinds of aftermarket stuff to your knife. You can replace things, you can anodize things. You really can have a lot of fun making it exactly the way you want it, where that is not a possibility, at least to the same degree with the Inkosis. I'm aware, guys, of the program that Reeve has where they'll, etch all kinds of crazy things on your handle. Generally speaking, when someone shows me that, I hate them, right? If you want to have a painting, I've seen pictures of like sunsets and bears and dogs and everything else on here. I think it looks ridiculous. No offense to anyone who has that, but I will admit that that's an option, and it's a cool option if you are into that sort of thing. To me, that's not appealing at all, but the modularity of the Hinderer is really, really cool. And I can do all that stuff on my own, which again, I think adds, so I could buy this and a year later decide, hey, I want to change the hardware. I want to change the clip. I want a different scale. You have all kinds of options available to you in terms of what you're going to do with these. And that's really, really nice. So modularity is a big plus, I will say, for the Hinderer. Both of them come apart equally well. Let's move down to construction and ergonomics. That's feel in hand. So both of these are simple. Both of them are reliable. Both of them are very, very heavily built to be just, the kind of knife that's going to last and last and last and last. And both of these will. That's the real joy about these knives, is you can buy this and plan to give it to your kids. Okay, that's how great they are in terms of a lifespan. Both of them are very well put together. Both of them are overbuilt, if you will, and they're overbuilt in meaningful ways, not just right. There's a lot of knives out there where all they've done is taken their blade stock and titanium slabs and made them thicker, right? And that's not all that being overbuilt is about, okay? That's giving an overbuilt feel, but it's not an overbuilt knife. These are truly overbuilt, okay? So components are bigger, like the washers are big, the lugs and the stop pins and everything is just big and heavy duty and capable. Now, that is pretty much a tie. And in fact, feel in hand, I've got to give a tie as well. All right, so the Hinderer, I will say, feels a little nicer in a saber grip, and of course gives me that option to choke up, which I really, really like. The Inkosi feels really, really nice and really, really natural in hammer grip, or it has a little more versatility in terms of, where you hold it and how it feels in different grips. And the reason I've got to really call these a tie is, both of them shine in different ways. So if you're a person who likes the versatility and simplicity of the Inkosi, then go that way. If you're the person who really likes that positive saber grip, a little bit of extra jimping, and the ability to choke up, go for the Hinderer. They're both good in slightly different ways. And so it's not, again, I've kind of got to call it a tie in terms of just their overall feel in hand and the ability to work with them. Again, the one area where there's a significant difference is in carryability. So the way this is put together, yes, it's heavy duty, yes, it's got big components, but when you put it in your pocket, you really hardly know it's there. By the way, they weigh almost the same as well. Both of them are about 5.5 ounces. So the big difference is going to be that the Reeve in pocket, the Inkosi, is very slim and easy to deal with. So it gets some extra points there. The other thing, now this is not significant to me, and one of the things I know always comes up in Chris Reeve versus Hinderer discussions is the ability to have a left-handed option from Chris Reeve and not so much for Hinderer. Listen, guys, I don't mean to put down any of you left-handers out there, but you remember on Simpsons when the leftorium went out of business? The problem is there's only 10% of the population that's left-handed. And when you're selling something, right, you need to make it appeal to the vast majority. So if you have a choice to make something that 90% of people can use or 10% of people can use, which one are you going to pick? All right. Now listen, I know the immediate response is going to be, well, it's not right. They only need to produce a few left-handed versions and then they're good to go. And yes, I get it. All right. And it would be nice to see Hinderers offer a left-handed option, but I understand why they don't. Okay, so if you're a lefty, of course you're automatically going to be drawn to Chris Reeve knives because you've got that option. That is a really nice option. And if I was a lefty, I would be upset because I love the Hinderer so much, and to not be able to get one that kind of went with my dominant hand would be sad to me. Okay, so I feel your pain, but I understand why Hinderer is not feeling a huge rush to start bringing out left-handed versions. All right. So in terms of construction and ergonomics, which one gets the win? Man, this is a tough one. I've got to say for carryability, the Chris Reeve gets the win. The other possibilities are too close to call, right? They both feel good in hand. They're both very versatile, and it depends on your preferences. So it's not really fair to pick a knife based on my own personal preference rather than objective sort of measurements. And so I'm going to call that part a tie, but where there is a difference that is objective is the fact that the Reeve carries in pocket a little nicer. So that point goes to the Reeve. So really at the end of the day, we're pretty well tied, depending on what means most to you. When we talked about takedown and maintenance, they both tied, but the Hinderer has more variation available and it's a little easier to sort of dress up to your own specifications. When it comes to construction and ergos, again, they're very comparable. They're both heavily built, but the Inkosi is a little nicer to carry. When it comes to action, lockup and deployment, the Hinderer won that one pretty solidly. When it comes to blade, the Inkosi won that one. So out of 4 sort of categories that I've used, and I tried to simplify this quite a bit, we could have divided those categories out more, but out of the 4 categories I've used, they have really gone back and forth with a sort of a tie. And the same is true, if you try to bring in value, that's where a lot of times this video, ends up. Well, they're very close, but one costs less. But even that doesn't help us because they cost about the same. Okay, so the fact is that I adore both of these knives. They are both favorites of mine for slightly different reasons. The Inkosi, I find it's just beautiful. I really like that sort of minimalist aesthetic, and this really, really has it. And so I just love the look, I love the simplicity, and I love the utility of the Inkosi. Well, I still feel like I don't have to sacrifice anything. I still have this knife that, I feel like if I was dropped off in the wilderness, I'd be happy to have this in my pocket. All right. On the other hand, the XM18 is tough and durable. It feels great in hand. It has that choil that allows me to choke up, which I really, really like. It's definitely overbuilt. You've got tons of modularity with it, and I love all of those things as well. For me, by the way, it's not as simple in its design, and that, that's different, but it's still simple in terms of functionality and quality, and it's just a simple thing done really well, okay, which I appreciate. How do I conclude this? this is going to be my take. I've been thinking about this all the way through while I'm talking. The Hinderer, for me, gets the win. Okay, the Hinderer just suits my personality a little bit more. And for me, if someone held a gun to my head and said you can only keep one of these, I would be keeping the XM18. All right, I am fortunate, okay, and extremely happy that no one is holding a gun to my head as I'm making this video. Because I really, really like both, and I like them both so much that I really would not want to part with either one of these. So while the XM18 bumps ahead just a little bit more for aesthetic reasons, I really, really enjoy both of these. Guys, I'd love to hear what you think down below. If you're going to buy one of these, use my link to DLT Trading. That is my favorite place to get this genre of knife, some higher end, nicer stuff. DLT Trading, as far as DLT has tons of Hinders in stock, and I'm pretty sure they've got some Chris Reeves as well, whether it's the Inkosi or something else. I'd love to hear your comments down below. Which one do you prefer and why? If you were making this video, what points would you have raised and given more significance perhaps than I did? Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We will talk to you soon.